Hi, Krishna.
Hi.
My name's Mark. I'm calling in from Perth in Australia.
Oh, nice to see you, Mark.
Thanks so much for the call. I'm familiar with a bit of your work through Buddha at the Gas Pump and some of your YouTube videos, and I really relate to what you've said so far and what everybody's shared. You kind of just answered my question. It's always the way. So you're talking about you're sort of using your hands to describe the sort of transcendental ground of being, and then the process of relaxing into what you called the feeling sense of the body. And I'm really curious because I currently undertake a practice that has a strong orientation to what you described about 5 or 10 minutes ago, which was basically allowing everything to be as it is. That's the instruction over and over again. And it's transmission based, and it's been profoundly beneficial for me in so many ways. But I was very curious and interested in the Waking Down and your work and Samuel's work. And I'm curious about whether what you described in the Buddha at the Gas Pump talk about meeting Samuel, and after you had this kind of realization, which I don't claim to have had. I don't claim to have had that much of a realization, and I'm looking for something else. I'm just drawn to this. So this relaxing back into the feeling sense.
Yes.
Is this what you're talking about by embodied awakening? And if so, can you talk a bit about that and how that might differ from, I guess, what else is out there? What I realise that might be a bit vague because I haven't described to you the practices that I do, but it seems like the distinction of calling it embodied awakening that's different. There's something about it.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you could say something about that, that'd be great. Thanks, Krishna.
Sure. So there's, embodied awakening is, it's not just used by Waking Down or Trillium. It's used by a lot of people use this, have this notion of embodied awakening. From my perspective, embodiment is like, is a process. And it's on a spectrum. And different traditions, different schools, different teachers emphasize different aspects of the embodiment process. What I found so radical in Waking Down and in Trillium was it included the ego. So, a lot of embodiment processes include the body and the sensations of the body and the energetic dimension of the body. And like you said, I think your phrase was something like letting everything be what it is, right? Is that what you said? Right? So this is so foundational for so many non-dual traditions. The notion of letting everything be as it is. But what I found in a number of the non-dual traditions, the communities, is that was true until you came to like some form of the ego. Like if you started telling your story or whatever, everybody would want to do deconstruction on it, which is fine if it wasn't one size fits all. It was like, there's this expression, to someone who has a hammer, everything in the world looks like a nail. It's deconstructing the sense of an individual self so that all the onion layers are undone and it's clear that there is no one there. I mean, I just did that in the beginning of this, in a sense, right? Very, very, very important, very good to do, and good to do regularly, I feel. And certainly if I was a renunciate like Ramana Maharshi or Lord Buddha or the Master Bodhidharma or Sri Shankaracharya, the original Sri Shankaracharya, my lifestyle would be such that it would be convenient for me simply to do that all the time. All I would have to do is, basically, I'm not belittling this even slightly, because it is a heroic lifestyle. But it's a lifestyle in which you just basically rely on other people to feed you, and if you don't get it, you don't eat. You have renounced relationships, so you're not worried about pleasing your wife or making sure she's happy or making sure that you can pay the rent. These are folks who were wanderers and who were literally, if the story of their mind was, oh, you haven't eaten in 3 days, you might die, they would just ignore that story. Because then that's what's to be. Let everything be what it is. Nothing to do there. But that way means that whatever you could say conditioning there is for you to want to take care of the health of the body, let's say, or to make sure that you have a shelter for the next day or whatever. That conditioning, for someone who isn't fully established there. Now, Ramana is an exception. He was fully established. He didn't actually do the life of renunciate till after he was awake. But for many people, they become renunciates as part of their path. They become monks. Then there's then the counseling is to learn to discriminate and ignore that story continuously, and that's fine, because you're renouncing the world anyway. But for those of us who are not renunciates and are not living that lifestyle, when the conditioning is there to live your life, the relationship to that conditioning has to be different. It's true that there's suffering in thinking that your happiness is going to come through your marriage or through your job or your career. That's all true. That doesn't suddenly not be true in an embodied realization. But nevertheless, the way in which that clarity about how it is not satisfactory inherently happens in the context of actually living it. So you embrace the lived life. So what I found so amazing about Waking Down Trillium was that this recognition went right to the story. Like, yes, recognize how you're not the story, but also embrace the story in the sense of who you are as it arises, as you identify with it. Go back and forth. You're working both sides of a paradox. The way in which you are the person that you describe yourself to be, and the way you are the transcendent that isn't even a person. You hold both of these. And then there's a transformational process that unravels that sense of the personal self, not so that it disappears and that you go simply identify with the emptiness, but so that it becomes more and more translucent, more and more expanded, more and more loose. So the sense of yourself includes more. So the I amness piece, like the me, expands and expands and expands. So you do end up letting go of a smaller sense of yourself, but through a more organismic or automatic or natural process, which is kind of, so much of the non-dual world is a non-duality in which process, it really depends. So there's many, right now at this point in time, there's many, many different teachers. So it's not really wise to generalize at all. But I'll just say that often people want immediate now. In other words, they're pointing to the transcendent now in every moment. Beautiful. My own master Papaji, he was, oh my God, the most skilled at this, a master at this unbelievable, with incredible sense of presence. So then he not only pointed you to there was no room for your thought. You were just right there. You just didn't, right there. And to be that confident in your being as consciousness itself is so important. So I don't want to, in any way, shape, or form, create a dichotomy. For me, honestly, I don't see these as this one's better than this one. Although some people in all the different schools, including Trillium, can talk that way. I don't like that. It's not my, it's just that they develop different ways. They develop different things. And to be able to describe the distinctions and the differences is useful, because in each individual person's path, they may feel, hey, I want to develop this piece or this piece. So the only other traditional path that I found that also embraces this way is actually Keshmer Shaivism. The Trika tradition is a very old tradition, and it also embraced the ego in a very, very similar way. And there seems to be a transmission connection because, Sanyal Bandar's teacher was Swami Muktananda. Adida. And Adida, or Da Frijan, his teacher was Swami Muktananda. Swami Muktananda claimed that his own sense of realization was connected to the teachings of Kashmir Shaivism. He said that he felt that was his, he had the most affinity for those traditions and teachings in terms of his own sense of what was happening in his life. So the embrace of all of you means you're even letting be your sense of ego. You're not running to deconstruct that either. You're honoring your sense of ego. When you feel moved to do deconstruction exercises or self-inquiry, by all means do it. And that is important. Self-inquiry is important. Deconstructive, I think, any kind of pointing out instructions, very important to continue throughout your process forever. For me, they are. Nevertheless, the way that I live my life is not continuously saying, oh, I'm not, this isn't real, this isn't who I am, this isn't real. It's like there's a way in which, I love this phrase, and this is a phrase that I coined in the Tapestry teachings. It's an old phrase, but I use it in the Tapestry teaching. There's a way in which, because that way I can say, there's a way in which my story isn't true, and there's a way in which it's true. There's a way in which I'm not the body. And I want to know the way in which I'm not the body. And there's a way in which I am the body. And I want to know the way in which I am the body. Rather than the verb to be, which I think actually is where people get tied up. And they say, well, only embodied realization is real realization, or only transcendent realization is real realization. There's a way in which we're the transcendent, fundamentally. And there's a way in which we are our bodies. And there's a way in which we're the story that we tell ourselves. And there's a way in which we're not the story that we tell ourselves. And a way in which we're not our bodies.